We are at Alta Vista Vineyard up in the Moon Mountain District, which is sort of one of the truly rare and wonderful vineyards that we get to work with. Gewürztraminer planted in the 1940s up at 1,200 feet on the Sonoma side of Mount Veeder. And this vineyard has sort of been utilized, kind of like semi-let go, utilized, semi-let go.
Yeah.
And it had been utilized and been semi-let go, and you found it.
Yeah, when Joe Votek told me about it, he said, "Oh, do you know, there's an old Gewürztraminer vineyard up on the hill." He said, "It's been abandoned." He said, "I think you'd probably get the grapes for free if you just gave him a call."
Yeah.
And I said, "Free's good. I could use free." And what kind of grapes, Joe? He said, "Oh, Gewürztraminer." And I said, "Gewürztraminer? Really? You're kidding me. I don't know anything about making Gewürztraminer."
Yeah.
Yeah. So I phoned up Mac and said, "I'd like to come up and take a look at the vineyard. Are you interested in letting me have some of these grapes?" And he said, "Oh yeah." He said, "I've just abandoned it. I haven't done anything. You can have the grapes." He said, if you're going to visit the vineyard, you've got to be careful because you have to go through the goat yard." And he said, "I want to tell you that the billy goat in that yard just broke my arm a short time ago."
Yep.
So as you go through the goat yard, you have to open the gate and keep yourself between the billy goat and the car.
Right.
And make sure that that you watch where the billy goat is at all times and get across the yard. Make sure you close up the gates. The nannies won't bother you, but the billy's pretty bad.
Yeah.
So then you get across the gate, and what he didn't tell me was the road was washed out.
Right.
So I got up to the road washout, and of course had to walk up the hill, which was fine. And I got here and I found this vineyard, and the grass was up to the top of the vines, and
Right.
and I'm going through the the vines, and I'm saying, "Wow, there are actually grapes in here." And Gewürztraminer is not a white grape, really. It's a bronze grape.
Yeah.
It's really actually beautiful. And so there were like these beautiful grapes hanging in there. So I thought, I tasted one. I thought the acid's pretty good. Maybe 23. Who knows? So I clipped some clusters and took them back down and tested the sugar. It was 34 bricks. And I went,
Sweet.
"Oh, okay, Sauterne time."
Yeah, I was going to say, what are you going to do with 22% potential alcohol Gewürztraminer?
Yeah, well, you're going to make it into a late harvest wine, yeah. And it very nicely stopped fermenting right about 11.5%. So it left me a lot of residual sugar, and it was delicious. It was really good. It was like it was better than I'd expected. I'd tasted some Gewürztraminers that were late harvest that were done up at Chateau St. Jean by Dick Arrowwood, and they were good, but this one was better. I thought, wow, it must be some special clone of grapes. So I phoned up Mac the next year and said, "Hey, you going to give me some more of those grapes?" And I'd given him a bottle of the wine, and he said, "Yeah." He says, "I tasted that wine. It was pretty good." He said, "I knew you'd be back, so I took care of the vineyard this year, and you're going to pay for the grapes." So we took care of it for a while. Peter Haywood really took over taking care of it. But I think he just got tired of working with it, and we were making two wines out of it. We were actually making an early harvest dry Gewürztraminer, and using the upper side here to make a late harvest Gewürztraminer in years where it made sense to do that.
Yep.
So the wines were delicious. But
Well, and you always made your wife, your Alsatian wife, very happy by making early harvest Gewürztraminer.
With a father from Alsace, I figured I could get some extra brownie points.
I think you did.
Doing stuff for my wife. That was okay. But the vineyard itself, was a hard management problem.
Yeah, it's a really difficult vineyard to get to.
And I think Peter just got tired of doing it, and he told me that the vineyard was abandoned. It had all died. I hadn't been up here in a year or two.
Yeah.
And that that it was being pulled out and being replaced with Syrah. And I thought, okay, that's a strange thing. So
to his credit, 4 vines have been pulled out and replaced by Syrah.
Yeah, there you go.
So it wasn't. It was a partial truth.
Yeah, it was very partial. So I ran into Hella downtown, and I said to her, "What a shame that you took out that old Gewürztraminer."
Yeah.
And she said, "I didn't take out that old Gewürztraminer."
Yeah.
She said, "It's still there." She says, "Peter just didn't want to farm it anymore."
Yeah.
"Well, why didn't you call me?" I said. She said, "Well, because Peter said it wasn't worthwhile."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, I know somebody who might like to work with it."
Yeah.
And enter Morgan Twain-Peterson,
Yeah, that was in
who I brought up here, and And you had a special relationship with Hella, as
Oh
I
yeah.
recall.
Well, Hella worked at my local school, and Hella is German, and she has a very cute accent, and she's a very cute old lady now. But when I was in first, second, and third grade, she would always just call me Morg, which is not my favorite nickname. But she still calls me Morg to this day, and she can get away with it because she's like 75 and adorable. But yeah, it's a pretty special place. I mean, and the farming difficulty is not to be understated because, I mean, it's like a half-mile rocky cat track, and if you're going up in a crawler, you're getting the shit beat out of you, I'm sure.
Definitely getting pounded.
And so everything up here is done completely by hand. Like all the weed, this is all entirely weed whacked or string trimmed. There's no tractors that really get up here except for a couple sprays a couple times a year, and as a result, it's an incredibly expensive vineyard to farm, but it's well worth it.
Yeah, and you've done a wonderful job of bringing it back.
So far, so good. There's actually crop on the vines this year.
I know, it's like amazing. You may actually have some wine to sell.
I know, we've been setting records for Gewürztraminer pricing in Sonoma County, but it's a pretty amazing place. So yeah, we make a dry wine out of it now, and maybe someday we'll get enough crop that we too can make a dessert wine and a dry wine.
That's right, and we'll compare them, and I'm sure mine will be better.
The 93 is still drinking pretty well.
The 93 is still drinking
As is the
very
94.
Well. Yeah,
I'm
really
sure
nice.
Chris will be overjoyed to sell another SKU of Gewürztraminer.
The California hot grape.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be the next it grape.